Good morning, Tallahassee. It's time to Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Now, here's your host, Aslan Hajavandi.
Welcome into it, folks. It's Wake Up War Chant on this Thursday. Huge special guest in studio all day today. None other than the managing editor of warchant.com, Ira Schofel. Ira, thanks for being here, man. How are you?
Thanks for having me, man. It just dawned on me that if I was a host of this show, I think Warren G. Regulate. I think that would be the every time we start the show, we go with a little Regulate.
I was telling Corey, I'm like, we need to have. I don't want to go total Jeff and just have my
standards.
Yeah, Firewoman and everything. The Who that starts the show every time. But I'm like, I think like on Monday and Friday we should always have the same opening and closing song. And he's like, people are going to hate the song on Monday because it's Monday. No one's going to like it. But all right, well, I'll have to start taking some requests on things. So we'll try to get that factored in here. This show brought to you by For the Table Hospitality, College Town, 3 great properties, Central, Township, and Madison Social. Check them out. You will not be disappointed. We resume programming now, though, here on FRN, the Fisher Radio Network. It's all Jimbo all the time, folks. We know how much you love it. Part 3 of the Jimbo Chronicles set to drop later today. Corey's gone. Gene's gone. Now it's your turn. It's almost like Hell Week for a pledge. You have to kind of go ahead and put yourself out there for everybody and then take the lumps. Message board's actually been fairly receptive, I think, to everything. Ira, I mean, what's kind of been you as the managing editor deploying these stories out and kind of seeing everyone's feedback on it? What are you taking away from things so far?
I think the vast majority of people, it's been enlightening to some degree, because again, and it's kind of what you went through when you moved back to Tallahassee is if you didn't know kind of what was going on behind the scenes, the way everything ended so quickly, I think, was jarring to fans, because I just think that people were like, wait a minute, Jimbo seemed like a good guy. He won us a national title. He did good things. He cares about his kids. Why are people kind of pushing him out the door when he wants to go? Why aren't they dragging him back? Why aren't they trying to keep him in Tallahassee? So I think for those people, I think it's been kind of enlightening. There are some other people who are kind of like, yeah, I'm over it. I just want to move on. And that's fine. But we do feel like there's a story to tell, especially, again, for the people who, who are the more casual fans or the fans who just don't have any access to people inside the program. Because the big thing about it, and we could talk about this more, and I try to touch on it in my piece that's going to go up today, is just if you met Jimbo Fisher in different settings, you might have completely different experiences. And because of that, you may not understand where people in the administration were coming from, where people inside the athletic department were coming from, where people in the media were coming from. So I think we're kind of trying to illuminate some of that a little bit, while also telling the positive stories. Yeah, I mean, some people have commented on our iTunes rating, which you should go over to iTunes right now, give us 5 stars so we can catch up the Seminole headlines. Best show ever. And, people are like, yeah, obviously this Aslan guy likes Jimbo. He obviously wasn't around Tallahassee. And I'm like, yeah, guilty as charged. I was not here. I was very much like everybody on warchant.com trying to get most of my information through you guys. And you could kind of read between the lines. And my whole thing was just like, listen, I get it. Okay, he's a jerk, but we're winning. I mean, again, everything goes back to my fact, just things were just so downtrodden before he got here. And he gave a lot of hope, and he made everything feel so much more, positive, which is crazy because he was so clearly negative off the field when it came to everything else. But that's the other part of it is that he wasn't just like a mean guy all the time. And that's one of the things I've tried to explain to people when they say, well, why didn't this come out earlier? Well, like a lot of us, you have good characteristics and bad characteristics. And like you said, he did a lot of good things for the program. He also did a lot of unbelievable things for people, like sick kids. I mean, if I started telling you the stories from now till the rest of today, till tonight, I wouldn't get to all the stories of kids he would FaceTime before games, of sick kid in a hospital bed somewhere, or a kid who maybe got bullied, or a kid, these people would send these notes to Joy Beach, his assistant, and have these, tell these stories about their kids who need help and who need somebody to kind of encourage them. Man, Jimbo will get on the phone with those kids. He'll do FaceTime with them. He'll send them gifts. There's been people, FSU fans at other schools, students at other schools who are FSU fans that have been injured or had accidents or got sick. and Jimbo, send jerseys and send helmets and get players to sign stuff. So they did. I mean, he did a lot of great things, and obviously the work with the Kids First Fund. So it's not like you're just this ogre, but how you treat people does also have some bearing in how you're seen and how people perceive you. And I think that's where it depended on what setting you interacted with him in. But professionally, a lot of people in the administration really had a lot of problems working with him because he just was very difficult to work with.
Irish FL, the managing editor of WarChant.com, joining us here on Wake Up War Chant all day today. Super stoked for that. So what's going to be your bombshell? Enough positive stuff, Ira. What bombshell are you going to drop? I think people are expecting to hear stories about like Jimbo Fisher showing up in a singlet and challenging, Stan Wilcox to a fight at Tully Gym after like a game or something. And it's like, all right, listen, just work with us here, folks. They're trying to paint a picture.
Yeah, I think to me the biggest things were, and again, and what I'm and I am touching on the negative things also, but like, it's things like just being unreasonable. And one story that I'm telling in the piece was, they were trying to make some changes to the practice fields, and because the way they were making the changes to the practice fields, this was before they had the indoor practice facility. And the old fields, I mean, if you remember the way the old practice fields were set up, the drainage was terrible. So when Jimbo came in, he really wanted them to fix the drainage and get it. And so when they did it, they came up with a study, and this is told to me secondhand. This is not firsthand, but this is from people in the athletics department at the time. So they said, look, we can do it this way or we can do it that way. If we do it this way, it'll be great and it'll be ready quickly. But if you do that indoor practice facility, it's going to be a problem. We're going to have to redo everything again. If we do it the way, if you really think you're going to have that indoor practice facility, we'll do it this other way, but it's going to take us a little bit longer, and it's going to be a little bit different project. And from what I was told, Jimbo wanted the way now. He wanted the quick way. He wanted it done the way he wanted it, even though he also was pushing it the other time with the indoor practice facility. Then they came back and said, well, now we got a problem because we just spent all this money on this. Now it's going to cost extra money to indoor practice facility. And when people in the administration went to him and said, look, man, this is why we talked to you about this, he was kind of like, nobody told me anything. I didn't know. Nobody ever mentioned that to me. Nobody. And the meeting was held in his office. Like he tried to tell them that he never. So that it's that kind of thing. It was hard to deal with him for the administration and for people, the boosters, and because he kind of, I don't want to say lived in his own reality, but just I think would tune things out. Important conversations and then get mad about them later, and it's like, well, you were part of that conversation. So those are kind of things also that, again, I think just kind of explain why it was so difficult, especially in the last few years.
Part of things with me and my sort of skepticism of letting him walk out, and as people have heard, I've come around. I like Willie. I think Willie's going to do really well. Is the fact that obviously he built this program back up. I don't know how much of a sort of disconnect there was with him thinking that because he did this, he won a national title that now gave him equity to get away with pretty much anything you want to do because maybe Nick was doing that. And it's just, you did not achieve that level of sustainability. I don't know how much of it was just him, maybe just kind of thinking that he was just too important after all, or maybe the program was now him.
I do think there was a certain validation that he got from that national title, which it would happen to anybody. And so now all of a sudden, anybody that
and listen, after that season, there was an autopsy written by Heather Dinich that, listen, this is the best they're ever going to be. This is the best they're ever going to be. And then the next season, bam.
Well, and they threw it in everybody's face after that season. And that's, he referenced that a bunch of times. He also would kind of make comments to me because when I was at the paper in 2012, I went after him. I went after him when they beat Florida, when they lost to Florida. I went after him when they lost NC State. And and I did compliment them after the bowl game, while also acknowledging that this team's 12-2, but man, they didn't beat anybody. If you go back and look at that 2012, and that's one of the things that really I think kind of created some of the chasm between fans and the media versus Jimbo.
That was the most underwhelming 12-2 season in collegiate football history.
Is infuriated that people don't appreciate that team. It kills him that people don't appreciate the 2012 team, because his point what he always would try to say, and he brought it up over and over again when they won it in 2013, was that 2013 couldn't have happened if 2012 didn't win an ACC championship. His point was you have to learn. You have to learn to be a champion, and when they learned to be a champion, then they had that. That's what carried him in 2013. Now they knew what it takes to be a champion. The rest of us looked at that 2012. I mean, people go back and look at the 2012. Go to nolfan.org, which is a great resource.
Or you can go on warchant.com. Can you pull up the archives?
I don't know if we have it as well as the nolfan.org site is got the best archives.
No, it is. It's amazing. Well done, whoever runs that. We need to try to get him on the show sometime.
Bob Peroni, I think is his name. But anyway, it's
I got up the season. What do you want me to rattle off? Here we go.
Look at the end of the year records for the teams they beat in 2012.
Well, how about this? The first 3 games: Murray State, Savannah State, Wake Forest.
Those are 3 big ones.
Then Clemson, obviously, South Florida.
Clemson had a good year.
Yeah.
Clemson had a good year, but who else did they beat that had a good year? Northern Illinois is the only other team that maybe had a winning record. Like, look at the end of. Do you see the end of year record?
I do not. It looks like
column?
I think I'm on Wikipedia. Actually, is this what they were ranked at the time? I'm on Wikipedia. I'm not on NoFan.
Man,
Sorry,
I'm on nolfan.org. But anyway, what he has is he'll have the teams ranking when they played, and then at the end he'll have their end of year record, which is really useful. And man, all of those teams were awful. But Clemson's the one team they beat that had a pulse. The Florida team had a good record, but Florida beat them. It's anyway. So, but that killed Jimbo.
There was a lot of data on this, almost too much data.
The year by year records.
No, I did just like the singular season. All right, I think I'm here. All right, it says game day and then opponent end of year. Okay, here we go. Sorry. All right, I finally got it. Be thankful. Corey never gets this. Corey just spouts out something. I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. You're right, Corey. I believe you. I trust you. All right, so Clemson finished the season 11th in the AP, 9th in the USA Today poll. Florida 9th in the AP, 10th.
But did you see the record at the end of the year?
Florida's 11-2. Clemson. Everybody. So here we go. Murray State finished the season 5-6. Savannah State 1-10. Wake Forest 5-7. Clemson 11-2. South Florida 3-9. NC State 7-6. Boston College 2-10. The U 7-5. Duke 6-7. Virginia Tech 7-6. Maryland 4-8. The Gators 11-2. Georgia Tech 7-7. That's the team you beat for that championship.
Yeah, that was
Northern Illinois 12-2.
Is they beat bad teams all year. I mean, Clemson was the closest thing to a good team. Then they get in the ACC championship game and have to play Georgia Tech, who's like 500.
And wasn't that they weren't even supposed? Miami was supposed to be in it, but the sanctions or whatever.
And then they go.
Charles Kelly was coordinating some part of that defense.
Yes, he was their coordinator. Yeah. Then they go to the Orange Bowl and get Northern Illinois. So I mean, they never had to play anybody that year. Really,
and that was an ugly game for the most part.
Oh, it was.
Florida State, Northern Illinois.
In fact, again, another indictment of that season. I'm not trying to kill that team, but just because of this point and why people were underwhelmed with them. I talked to a coach. A lot of the former FSU coaches have gone to Akron,
right?
And I talked to one of those coaches. I don't want to say his name. Because they play in the MAC with Northern Illinois. And I talked to him the day before the Orange Bowl, and I said, man, can Northern Illinois do anything against Florida State? And he goes, man, if Florida State doesn't beat them by 50, that's a bad day. It's a bad day at the office. And it was a game in the second half. It was like a touchdown game for a while.
It was way too competitive. Way too competitive.
Anyway, I'm not trying to dog that team. A lot of good players on that team.
I'll dog the team. So if you guys get mad, if you're on the 2012 team, don't get mad at Ira. You can get mad at me. Still love you guys, but come on.
But that season, the fact that nobody appreciated that season drove him nuts. And I do think that's kind of when he started really getting mad at people that didn't appreciate that team. And then the next year you win the national title, and it's like, man, all right, let's go. I've done this, and I'm validated. And I do think that's kind of around the time things change. And then, you can throw in all of the other factors that you might be concerned, his personal life, ill child. I mean, there's a lot of stresses beyond just what was happening on the field. But I think something changed there, and I think that's what we're going to touch on a little bit next week as we wrap this thing up, is that, it is a remarkable story if you think about it. I mean, I don't know how many stories like this we've ever seen in college sports where a coach follows a legend, has tremendous success, wins a national title within 3 or 4 years, which never happens after following a legend, then has 29 straight wins on top of the world, the crown prince of college football behind Nick Saban. And then 3 years later, it's just, Rome is burning. I mean, that's just an and then leaves for Texas A&M. I mean, it's just a crazy story. So again, we're not trying to belabor it, but I think it's worth kind of, really looking at what happened and how it happened.
Right. Again, there's a rhyme to the reason for these stories coming out. Ira will touch on that further when we come right back on the Fisher Radio Network. It's Wake Up War Chant.
Darn pop-ups and video ads.
Are you wasting your time again on clickbait FSU updates that are bloated down with ads?
Yeah. And after crashing my computer, the information isn't even up to date. You're on warchant.com. What's really going on with the Seminoles?
For the real scoop, you'll need to get your own War Chant subscription.
What's it cost?
Free. There's a 30-day trial offer right now.
You know I like free. Sign me up.
Use the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Nobody has more accurate and timely information on the Noles than warchant.com.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.
But you can't be any geek off the street. Gotta be handy with the steel, if you know what I mean. Earn your keep.
Regulators, mount up. It was a clear black night.
There you go.
I mean, how beautiful is that?
It's timeless.
It really is, man.
Timeless.
It gets better. It's
Fantastic.
Nate Dogg.
Syrupy.
Nate Dogg passed, by the way.
R.I.P. R.I.P. OG.
We'll pour one out for Nate Dogg.
Yeah. Welcome back, folks. It's Wake Up War Chant. Ira Schofel, managing editor of warchant.com, joining us all day today on the program. Corey Clark is alive and well. He'll be back tomorrow. He's just simply a road warrior because, he went to Georgia. They're fans, road warriors, hawk, animal. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out something there. All right, Ira, so as we continue programming here on the Fisher Radio Network, talking about Jimbo Fisher and his demise. Again, folks, listen, I know Fisher fatigue is starting to set in, and I get it. I get it. We hear you. Trust us. We do hear you. We would love to talk to Willie. We'd love to talk to all these coaches as they're walking off the field after the chase every morning, but that's just not the way things work right now. And I think, again, it is a good idea because there's probably 80% of the people on that board that are not plugged in, and there's 20% who think they are, and they kind of are, but they're really not. Actually, I shouldn't say that 10% are, and then there's 10% who really are. Well, those 8% of people are really curious to hear about all this sort of stuff. And I know a lot of these stories are just kind of, hey, listen, he had redeeming things and then he had not so redeeming things. But next week or later down the road, there's going to be, I guess, another sort of way that this will all be buttoned up. And then we kind of
we'll really move on.
We push the ship into the bottle into the ocean and send the
Yeah,
message.
I think I wrote a column right after it all went down. And I wrote the column saying that, would it have been different if Monk Bonasorte had been alive? Because that was Monk Bonasorte was kind of the guy that kind of the glue in that department. He was one of the administrators he was the administrator who could really kind of talk to Jimbo. Was a former FSU star safety. Was a ball player. They spoke the same language. Jimbo respected him. He respected Jimbo. So they had a good relationship, and he could be the guy, the kind of conduit between the administration or the boosters and Jimbo.
I think that was a huge insight that you provided because that was one of the things, obviously that's why I'm paying to be a subscriber to War Chance, to find out those sort of things. And you're hearing all these backstories about Jimbo, and then when you kind of drop that, listen, he had this buffer and it all made sense. You're like, oh, well, dang. So it all starts kind of adding up.
So your Monk gets his cancer and he has about a year-long battle, but then he ended up passing away. And so once you lose that, really there was nobody else that really could reach Jimbo. And I think that kind of led to the last year. So, yeah, when we kind of tie things up next week, the reason I said that column was because in that column I tweeted, this will probably be my last column on Jimbo Fisher. And a bunch of people tweeted back. They're like, no, it won't. And they were right. So, yeah, we'll kind of tie it up next week and try to, again, kind of, bring it all together because, again, I do think this is a, really historic coaching tenure, the way it went down. I went to a function last night with a lot of people who are involved in athletics, and it was everybody you talk to, it comes up. I mean, Jimbo this or
it hasn't even been 90 days. He was here for 10 years, man. And that's what I don't get this whole, enough already. Like, okay, I get the fatigue part of it, but listen, there's a whole story to be told, and the guy was here forever.
And you made a good point. Part of it is people do want to move forward. They want to know more about Taggart. They want to hear about what's going to happen. They want to see that new fun and happy
lethal simplicity.
Yes, they want to see all that. So I think there's a feeling like, why are you guys worried about the old stuff? Let's talk about the new stuff. But like you said, it's not like we're getting any access right now to do that. So, I think Coach Taggart's really trying to to kind of control a little bit what's going on, really build relationships with these players. So he doesn't want to expose them, I guess, yet to a lot of media. So at this point, we're kind of where we're at. As spring practice gets closer, I know we'll be talking to him, and it sounds like his assistant coaches and some players, and the access will get better, and then we can start telling those stories looking forward. But as of right now, I mean, we just don't have that access.
I feel like during fourth quarter drills, though, there usually would be some semblance of a story that you guys would be able to post. I mean, did Jimbo make himself available, or was that simply things that you guys would just source out?
Two things. One was usually one time during fourth quarter drills, we would be able to come out and cover it, and he was usually towards the end. So we would do a big, video, photos, and all that for that. But we would usually Gene would work his sources and get some information on who's really standing out.
Yeah.
Who are the guys?
But there was the one day though that
we would actually open it up to the media, and again we assume that that's going to happen. The chase, I think they've had two.
We hope, man.
They started on Monday at 6 a.m. So maybe they'll have like a brunch edition that we can come out and cover. I'm not all excited about the 6 a.m. version, but we'll do what we got to do.
Yeah, we'll be out there for that for sure. And another thing, too, and obviously I think it probably speaks to the whole fact that I think Willie wants to obviously get this foundation laid down before he lets people start stomping around in there. During signing day, how many years was it into Jimbo's tenure before he started letting everybody come into the war room on signing day? It was just like, hey, everybody come on down.
Yeah, and he would. It wasn't right away, I don't think. And it was usually there was kind of a condition to it, but he would do it. Usually, what they would do is if there was 3 or 4 announcements on signing day, Jimbo would say, okay, you guys can kind of wait in a holding area, like we'd be in this press area, and then right before the announcement, we'd all go into the war room and kind of watch all that. But the side, I don't know if we ever really wrote about this, but if the kid ended up committing to another school, we would all just kind of sneak back out and not post any video. So that was the deal. Like you could do it,
no doubt, video
if it's good, but we're not putting up a video of Jimbo slamming his fist on the table. So, and usually most of the time those guys know. For the most part, the kids will tell the school ahead of time, hey, I'm going to Michigan or I'm going wherever. So then they would let us know, like, that 10 a.m. thing has been canceled. Or just sit tight. We're not sure if we're going to bring you in for this one. And then we would know, okay, well, that kid ain't going to Florida State. But yeah, and this was Taggart's first year. And so, we weren't in there, but maybe going forward, this is all, he's got the approach he took at other schools where he was, a lot more open. And it sounds like he's going to be more open than Jimbo was. But I think there's a perception from some people because he's got a big personality and he's kind of, witty, and that he's going to be like Coach Bowden.
Yeah.
Come explore my program.
Not going to happen.
I don't think that's going to happen. So it's going to be somewhere in the middle.
Well, even Ed Orgeron, whose whole thing when he became interim coach at USC was, we're going to let everybody come on in here, watch our practice. And then Randy Shannon.
It's a good Orgeron.
Randy Shannon takes over at Florida, like, yeah, come on in, man. It's all about showing the kids off. And then, you start tanking, then it's like, oh, never mind. I mean, Orgeron went, I think, almost above Saban to where he was closing things down that, even like Les Miles would keep open. And so it's a bizarre sort of thing. And again, I think a lot of there's a semblance of the fan base or that segment that's, I don't even want any media around. Like, why are they even out there? Just let everything be secret so they can surprise Virginia Tech on Labor Day. And that's not how it works.
Well, man. And that's again, that's the. They're because we've heard that so many times through Jimbo's tenure where, if it helps us win games, I don't care if he never lets kids talk to you guys. Well, the problem is when the team's doing poorly, and this isn't why you should do it. This isn't why you should. There's a million reasons I could get. Well, not a million, but there's a lot of reasons I can give you for why players should get experience talking to the media while they're in college. But one of them that's a self-serving reason for the university is because then the fans can identify with these kids that they're watching. It's been probably 4 or 5 years since we've written, like any of us have really written really good features on players by talking to the players on the team, by talking to the coaches, because, the coach access has been limited. So if you wanted to do a good feature on somebody and really let people know who this person is, a Dalvin Cook or whoever, or DeAndre, you had to kind of go to their high school teachers, to their family, to people like that, which is fine, but that's not a complete picture either, because that's not who these kids are today. And so when times are tough and the team's doing poorly, I mean, think about the abuse Tavares McFadden had last year, or the abuse, Josh Sweat has had the last couple of years. If people knew what those kids, who they were and what their experiences have been and what kind of people they are, then I think people would be a little less likely to judge them based on what they see on Saturday. But if you don't know them, and to be honest with you, most of us in the media didn't know those kids because we didn't. It's not when you were here, like when you were helping us out when you were in school
back in the day, the Weatherford era.
Back in the day,
sweet Drew.
Those players from those times, like if I see them today, like guys that I covered 15 years ago, 10 years ago, they come up and it's hugs, and they remember the media who were good to them, that they respected, and they also it was just a good relationship, and we told their stories and got their stories out there. That hasn't happened in a few years, and I think that part leads to some of the angst or the lack of empathy from fans because they don't know these kids because we haven't had any access to them.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a bad example, but I'd always go back to Everett Golson. I remember, he
was here for a year and we never got to talk to him.
I mean, he was like 6-0, and he was getting criticized. And listen, it obviously didn't work out in the end, but I felt like it was so easy to just diminish him and not care because you never got to hear from the kid. He never had any sort of voice, so he was just this empty jersey, pretty much.
That's exactly right.
And it's bizarre when these kids are out there making these sacrifices and they can't even kind of speak and put some humanity behind it to where you kind of do check yourself. And like when Drew, I remember, golly, I'm not the old guy, but they'd put Drew Weatherford in a room and there'd be 5 or 6 of us just in a circle talking to him for 25, 30 minutes every week. And then now, I mean, being in local TV. Like, very rarely would I run kids, player sound because it's usually, they're not very plugged. And I'd only run if it was a local kid. But, man, I would watch the videos that you guys I mean, you want to talk about just
awful.
Want to be. You want to talk about want to?
Well, dude, would you want to be there? I mean, this is what I told Jimbo. I said, dude, I didn't say dude.
Jimbo just got like, hey, all these jerks out there that I hate, go humor them.
I mean,
now
really, you couldn't pick. Here, we're going to take this kid, this 19, 20, 21-year-old kid from wherever, and we're going to sit him in front of 20 dudes with tape recorders and iPhones, videotaping them, and all asking different questions about anything. I mean, like, there's no conversation. Like, if you do a one-on-one interview or those things you talked about where maybe there's 3 or 4 of us, we could all kind of get on a topic and kind of explore a topic and go somewhere, and it's a meaningful conversation, and you're getting to know something about them. When you've got 20 or 25 people and you got 4 minutes – and everybody's sticking iPhones in their face.
Who's running on the first team defensive line with you this week?
Yeah, how's so-and-so's ankle? Yeah. And then how's so-and-so coming along? I mean, it's just awful. Yeah. So they were awful, but they were set up to be awful. And they were set up to, like, not like us.
Yeah.
So, no, it was ridiculous. And so, again, I just think a perfect example, and it's not just the players, it's the coaches. I thought one of the greatest moments in the last 10 or 12 years was when we went to the Chick-fil-A Bowl. I think it was the South Carolina game. I guess it was that year.
Should have been, 2010 season.
And Rick Trickett ended up speaking at the they had the coordinator speak, and James Coley was the offensive coordinator, but he couldn't speak. He was his wife was having a baby, so they brought Rick Trickett.
Oh, yeah.
And Trickett talked about Rodney Hudson. And he broke down. He was like, I mean, every question we asked about Rodney Hudson, he would get emotional, and he would like. I mean, he was overcome with emotion talking about this kid like it was his son. And it was awesome. And it gave you an insight into, you see Rick Trickett hat whipping kids and screaming at everybody and looking like a maniac during the games. But that's the other side.
And it took like 3 years and 11 months for you to get that depth out of him about, something that special coming from a guy that gruff. It took almost 4 years to finally be able to pull that out of him.
Yeah. And so, but if you never get to talk to these guys, you don't get any of those relationships. So again, that's kind of my pitch. If you're listening to Coach Taggart, I don't think he needs it. I think he knows that there's a lot of reasons the players should talk, but that's it lessens the experience. And we talk about all these things you guys talk about, why fans don't come to games. I mean, I think those relationships are part of it. I mean, you remember the kids, you remember the players from 20 years ago or 30 years ago, their stories. And like when you talk to fans, FSU fans about the 80 team or whatever, they'll tell you about, this kid had to overcome this, or, this kid had never played that position before. They just know the stories, and it adds to the experience. But, man, you just don't get that anymore. We didn't get that anymore over the last few years.
One final thing we want to touch on, or at least I want to touch on, regarding Jimbo, perhaps a self-fulfilling prophecy that ended up self-destructing him, whether that'll change or not. We'll be right back. It's Wake Up War Chant here on ESPN 97.9.
You're locked in to Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Welcome on back to Wake Up War Chant, brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. Go over to College Town, check out the 3 great properties that they run, Madison Social, Central, and Township. You will not be disappointed. Hopefully you haven't been disappointed thus far, because we've had 5-star Ira Schofel here all day long. Corey will be back tomorrow. He's doing well. Ira, thanks again for being here, man. I appreciate it.
I am glad to be here, man. I'm getting used to the 5-star thing. I think I'm going to have my kids start calling me
It
that.
is. It's good, man. It's pretty sweet, man. Maybe we'll make like a 5-star challenge for like journalists, and then you can kind of run it or whatever. You know, have like a camp and all that kind of good stuff.
Special invitations.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so one thing I wanted to just touch on about Jimbo, and then we'll move along to other things. You know, we talked about the whole fact that, you know, players couldn't talk, coaches couldn't talk. It was all about the one voice thing. I wonder, like, would you be happy for Jimbo, or would you be like disappointed and like bitter if you found out that when he goes to A&M, he starts letting the players and the coaches talk? Because, I mean, you want to talk about all the outside stresses, whether it's, you know, personal relationships, you know, marriages and things of that nature. I mean, when you are going to go ahead and put the onus on you, like, listen, it's just going to be the one voice thing. I'm the guy that's going to do all this. And then it feels like at some point, maybe there was some semblance of a burnout that led to him, maybe, you know, the demise of him ultimately. I mean, would it be one of those things where you'd be like, all right, good job, Jimbo, way to adapt to your surroundings? Or would it be like, golly, like, why couldn't you have done that 2 years earlier?
I think I would laugh about it at this point, honestly. Kind of gallows humor. But I mean, it's like such a fictitious scenario. There's no way in hell that's ever happening. I mean, zero chance of that ever happening. Because, you know, like you said, it is the one voice thing and the control. And, you know, I'll be honest with you, man, there are parts of it that I understand, you know, and I do get it. Sometimes assistant coaches have agendas, and we've seen it here before, you know, before Jimbo took over, but throughout different years where
what are you talking about?
Where they've had assistant coaches who, you know, would kind of like have their own little mini press conferences coming off the practice field to kind of, you know, I mean, well, Kevin Steele was a good one. You know, Kevin Steele, when he was a linebackers coach, really liked telling the media what was going on. Like, he liked that relationship and kind of getting his side out there, and it was great for us. I don't know if it's conducive to, you know, I think part of the issues that those teams had in those days were, you know, you had the offense and the defense kind of pitted against each other. Well, that's what happens. And I think that's the concern for a head coach is, if I've got these assistant coaches out there and they're pleading the case for their position or their side of the ball, then that can lead to some stuff inside the team you don't want. So I get it. But at the same time, I think there's a trade-off to it, and I think there's positives to both sides. So no, I don't think that's ever going to happen. But I think I would just laugh. It would just be funny.
You know, I don't think he does it during the season, but when I was in Alabama, there was, I think maybe during the preseason, there'd be certain days where Malzahn would not have any availability at Auburn, and he'd like let Chip Lindsey or Kevin Steele actually go ahead and kind of run the show that day from the podium. And like, I mean, if you're under all this stress, obviously being the head coach, it's like one day, just like let the other guy talk and just leave early, man. Go hang out with your kids or something.
No, and I missed your point in the first question, which is I think it's very accurate that it is an issue, because Jimbo, for all the complaints about access, and this is something I've said throughout his whole tenure, for all the complaints about access, not getting the freshmen, not getting the assistant coaches, getting limited numbers of players throughout the year, the one thing he did better than any head coach that I've ever been around or seen was he talked all the time until this past season. This past season, he really shut it down. But until this season, the first 10 years he was here, certainly the first 7 as head coach, Jimbo would talk to us on Monday after. He would have a press conference on Monday at noon. Mm-hmm. A lot of times he would talk to us after practice Monday night if there was news. Like an injury came out or something. There was something happened in the game, and they waited for an MRI, and he needed to address the media on Monday. We'd get him on Monday. We would get him after practice on Tuesday. On Wednesday, he would be on the ACC coaches call. He'd do his call-in show Wednesday night. We'd get him again on Thursday after practice. Then after Saturday, after the game, we'd get him.
Yeah,
So
I love the Thursday, him leaning on the Heisman Trophy in the dark hallway interviews. Those are my favorite.
I used to make jokes about him being propped up by Jameis again. but no, seriously, I mean, he was as accessible or more accessible than any head coach I've ever seen. But I do think it took a toll on him. I mean, I think, man, it's, and it also was indicative of everything else he was controlling. That being that type of micromanager and being you feeling you have to be a part of all of these decisions and all of these discussions and all of these meetings. I mean, you can't do it all and coach all these, run around to coach the offensive line and coach your quarterback and run around and yell at the tight ends. I mean, he did stretch himself too thin, and I think the media is definitely one part of it.
I think, and a part too that maybe he wasn't, cognizant of. I'm not trying to diminish anything Nick Saban does, but I don't think Nick Saban is nearly as involved in, game day operations of calling plays to the degree that Jimbo is when it comes to calling offense. I mean, I think Nick let Pruitt, let Kirby, but then would light the fire when he had to. Same thing with like Lane Kiffin. So, he could have done the whole one voice thing like, Jimbo thought was the ideal, but I don't think Nick nearly had as much on his plate or didn't have that internal struggle as much as Jimbo did having to call plays on offense.
No, and I think again, from talking to former coaches and people around the program, I think one of the things that Jimbo, where he failed himself a little bit, was he did during the week. What you can do as a head coach is you can kind of really settle in, hone in on the game plan with the assistant coaches, and then let them take it over on game day, and then you focus big picture. But I think he liked having that control on game day, and also he didn't really like to limit, from what I understand, he didn't really like to limit that game plan on game day. He didn't like to go into a game and say, we're going to focus on this. He liked to have that whole menu available. Well, again, I think that led to a lot of stress and it led to a lot of the issues with plays getting in late and a lot of things like that. I think there are things he could have done to help himself. And I'm fascinated to watch what happens at Texas A&M because, to your point, I don't think he's going to change the media stuff, but you do wonder if he would adjust and learn from some of the mistakes, some of the things that hurt him in these last few years at Florida State. Is he going to learn from those, or is he just going to kind of bow up and I'll show you?
Yeah. Let's continue on with Bummerpalooza. Let's change gears, though. We'll stop talking about John James Fisher and the baseball team. Man,
get away from a bummer.
Yeah, I'm not going to make you say it because Corey won't say it. Will this be the year kind of a thing? But man, good gosh, your All-American left-handed ace, Mr. Friday Night goes forward. You got 4 2/3 innings out of him for the entire year. Tyler Holton, obviously, they're going to shut him down. Sounds like he will get Tommy John surgery later today. I think actually.
Yeah, today.
Man, that hurts, right? I mean, that hurts.
Yeah, and it's one of those that it really hurts in so many ways, And again, Tyler Holton. No matter who you talk to, he's a local kid, so he's been around that program forever. He used to come to the games as a fan, loved the program, came back for this year, turned down a lot of money from Major League Baseball to come back for the season, partly to help this team win a national title. And you look at it with this pitching they have and, this lineup, I mean, they should be in the mix. And then you lose him, so it's the double whammy of, man, this really hurts the team, but man, you feel terrible for that kid individually. So yeah, I think people are, they're the team, they're going to have a tough time kind of regrouping from this. This is a big deal. It's not just losing a player; it's losing and a two-way player, a guy that was going to be a force on offense as well. So it's a huge deal. I mean, the one thing I would say is this team does have a lot of talent left. They've got a lot of arms. It's not like this was a team that just had one ace and was going to try to, milk that. I mean, they've got a lot of pitching. And from the sounds of it, I think, eventually Austin Pollock, another Tallahassee kid, as a freshman, we saw a little bit of him.
He's done well thus far.
He was impressive in his opening weekend. Got a lot of talent. I think he's going to be in the mix for that Sunday job. If they move Cole Sands up to Friday and Parrish up to Saturday, I think Austin Pollock's got a real good chance to get that Sunday job. And he's got great stuff, man. He's an impressive young pitcher, but he's a freshman. They've done that before. Parrish was a freshman when he got that role. I think they're going to be okay, but I mean, you can't diminish. I mean, you can't minimize how big of a loss that is.
Yeah. I don't know if it's silver lining at all, but I mean, I guess the fact that it happens now, you can start throwing these guys in the mix right now and trying to figure out who I mean, As opposed to this happening in the middle of, May or early June, and then it's like, well, shoot, we don't have any time to throw these guys in the fire. We have to depend on what they did, 3.5 months ago against Stetson or something like that. So, and
also for him individually, it's great for him because, just talking to people about the recovery time. I mean, it's a good 10 month or so, process, sometimes longer. And for him, he might only miss the one season. If it's something that happens in the middle of a season, it could cost you the rest of that year plus the whole next season. So, from a timing standpoint, if it's going to happen, this is when you'd prefer it to happen versus the middle of the year. And they do. That's what I'm saying though. Like, you don't want to have a pity party for them because they are still a really good baseball team. They could have a great season. It's just, man, I mean, what a big blow.
I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot. Is his career over at Florida State?
No, I don't think so. Oh, hey, Florida State, I think there's a good chance. I think that if the problem for him is, he's a junior now, and so this was going to be his last leverage year. And so if he were to sit out this year, now he could, I guess theoretically, push to get that year back. But I just think as long as a major league team's willing to give him a decent
just kind of take what you can get.
I think you go at that point because if you come back another year, your leverage gets less and less. So I think if I had to guess, I'd say he's not going to pitch at Florida State again, which is a shame. But I also think it's probably the best thing for him because he doesn't have to go then play another year and risk anything else happening. He can go ahead and at least cash in and start his major league or minor league career.
Noles back in action on Friday, hosting Troy. 3-game set at Hauser starts Friday at 4 p.m. We understand the Cole Sands most likely will start Friday, and then Drew Parrish Saturday, and then we'll see what happens on Sunday. But keep it here. We'll see what happens after the break. We'll wrap things up on Wake Up War Chant. Irish Affel joining us here on ESPN 97.9.
WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source, knows now is a time of true excitement for Nole fans everywhere. That's why WarChant.com is especially proud to announce its newest team member, senior writer Corey Clark. Combine Corey's expertise with owner Gene Williams and managing editor Irish Affel, and WarChant.com boasts nearly 50 years of experience covering the team you love. It's Taggart time in Tallahassee, and that means now is the perfect time to sign up for your free 30-day trial. From National Signing Day to March Madness, WarChant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
You've made it this far, 3 segments worth. You can surely hang in for about 10 more minutes. I'm Aslan. He's Irish Affel, the managing editor of WarChant.com, joining us here all day on Wake Up War Chant. Corey Clark will be back tomorrow, but Ira, thanks for being here, man. I can feel the ratings in iTunes just surging up from 5-star Affel.
I actually had somebody ask me last night, hey, are you on that Wake Up War Chant show? And I said, well, I've been on it before, but not so much lately since Aslan and Corey kind of took it over. I'm not.
Oh wait!
I said,
don't make it sound like I'm pushing you out.
I said, but tomorrow I'm actually going to be on. So there you go. It was ironic that the guy asked me about it last night.
Very nice. This program brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. 3 great locations over in the College Town area: Central, Township, Madison Social. Check them on out. You won't be disappointed. I don't think you will be if you like food and good times and friendly folks. They seem to be there en masse. All right, so not to touch back on the other guy, but, as we were mentioning with things with the Jimbo Chronicles, kind of the plane starts landing here, one of the amazing things, the story of it all is the fact that he took over for Bobby Bowden naturally and was able to kind of be successful. And I know there's some conversation going on now. People are, if we can't hear from Willie and we don't want to talk about Jimbo, then the natural inclination for Florida State fans is start looking at the enemy, right? Start looking at Florida and Miami and see what they're up to. Florida obviously breaking in a new coach with Dan Mullen. Spurrier left, and then Ron Zook came in after Spurrier, right? And then they had to go with Urban Meyer. So I don't know. Somebody made a really compelling argument on War Channel, the Tribal Council. I guess they copied and pasted it from another website, but it basically broke down Dan Mullen's career at Mississippi State and kind of showed that, listen, he's strung together an 8-win season here, a 10-win season there. But the wins usually were chock full of FCS teams, and people want to parse numbers to kind of, you can either parse the numbers and make them look good or parse the numbers and make them look bad. And I don't know, I will always, I don't want to say be fearful, but, I'm still I'm an alum. I'm never going to stop being an alum, and I need to get away from saying we, but The biggest fear is always losing to Florida. And that's part of the reason why I probably really appreciated Jimbo so much is that, listen, this guy just didn't lose to Miami and Florida very much. We kind of had that thing settled and taken care of. If Dan Mullen isn't a success for Florida, if he wins a couple SEC East titles but then goes to Atlanta and gets, his head kicked in, at what point ever is there ever a point that Florida could lose the whole flagship university in Florida, the school in the SEC and the most talent rich state in the country? It's one of the best jobs in the I mean, it's always going to be one of the best jobs, but I think some people think it's a top 3, top 5 job. If they swing and miss on this one, is this going to start becoming a trend for them?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's definitely been a trend since Urban left. I mean, it's been a bad. I assume Dan Mullen will get things going offensively.
He will, folks. He's gotten quarterbacks out of nowhere to come to nowhere in Starkville and made them actually really productive guys.
Yeah, I mean, like Dak Prescott was a guy that I thought, no, there's no way. And shoot, he turns into an NFL quarterback.
Yeah. NFL was like offensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, so no, he definitely. I think he's going to turn around their offense, which is a problem. But even if it didn't work out, even if he somehow is a bust, which is possible, but if he is, I still think it's going to be like laying in wait. It's just one of those schools because of the alumni base, because of the money. It's like what they were before Spurrier took over. I mean, they were average to below average for several years after going on probation in the 80s. And, when Spurrier comes in, man, it's like overnight. It was like just lit the match on the kerosene. And then all of a sudden, all of the resources really, everybody just kind of rises up, and now they become a program. Same thing with Alabama. I mean, Alabama went through really tough times. You get the right coach, and it goes. And I think that's the advantage a school like Florida has, because they will, there is so much money there. There's so much tradition and old-time fans and alumni from years and years and years. So I don't think you could ever say, okay, well, it's done now. But it would be a big blow if he doesn't get it done, because – it has been a long time. And imagine the frustration if you're I looked this up at the end of the season for some reason. Their offense has been like outside of the top 100 for like 6 of the last 7 years or something like that. Like not just like the last year or 2 years. It's been like 6, 7, 8 years that they've been outside the top 100. What? I mean, it's unbelievable.
That's not what they grew up watching.
And you think of how mad Florida State fans have been the last couple of years. Well, multiply that by 3.
4-8 seasons, people. 4-8. Losing at Georgia Southern, not even completing a pass. Losing.
Man, that was a season.
It's just bizarre. I think one of the things that maybe I'm not fully grasping. Listen, Dan Mullen did a really good job recruiting in the state of Mississippi, and for whatever that's worth, a lot of people in Florida probably doesn't mean a lot. But Ole Miss had a lot to offer, as we found out through lots of papers of NCAA investigations. And that game meant a lot to him, the Egg Bowl. But, when he finally got his peer in Hugh Freeze, that thing swung. He owned Houston Nutt. But Houston Nutt was, running on 3 flats on, pretty much when he was, when Dan Mullen kind of got Dan Mullen got to Mississippi State and Houston Nutt was at Ole Miss. He recruited really well in Mississippi, but I just feel like, I don't know, I think if Willie makes an effort of it, I know we've done all these stories about opening up new barriers, new territories. Michael Langston's done really great work about that. But if Willie can lock down Florida and Mark Richt's going to get his, and then Dan Mullen's the odd guy out here, I can see that maybe him not working, not being as bad as, McElwain, but not touching what Urban Meyer obviously did.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, especially Willie Taggart in South Florida and this staff in South Florida. I think that's the one place we haven't seen it yet because they got in so late that they didn't really. And this one, I don't think this was the class to make a big splash in South Florida, especially after Miami locked up so many kids early. But I think this staff is going to do much better in South Florida than the old staff had been doing the last few years. One thing that we really hadn't talked about, Jimbo Fisher did a really good job of going to the Virginia area, D.C., and some of those other areas, but they had been missing in South Florida the last few years. I think Willie Taggart's going to get that going. Telly Lockett, these assistant coaches, are going to get that going again. And Florida's never been great down there. Florida State and Miami have always done much better down there than Florida. But what Florida's going to be able to do, and even whether it's Dan Mullen or Ron Zook or whoever the head coach is, they're always going to get those kids, Jacksonville, Orlando, those Central Florida to Northern Florida kids whose high school coaches were Gators, their school principals are Gators, their teachers are Gators. They see Gator shirts all day at school. A lot of those kids, they're still going to get them. You know, they're not going to get – I don't think they're going to do well in South Florida. I think Florida State's going to do much better in Tampa, which will affect Florida. But, you know, when they go head-to-head, I mean, obviously you like Willie Taggart's chances, no question.
Definitely. I like the chance of the show being really successul when you're on it, man. You should come around here more often, man. We'll bring you in.
We just got to tell Corey to, hey, Corey, we're not doing a show tomorrow. We're taking a little hiatus, Corey. Sorry. But we'll see you on Friday.
I like the way you think, man. But yeah, Corey Clark will be back with us tomorrow. Ira Schofel, thanks so much for being here, the managing editor of WarChant.com. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man. Regulate.
Yeah, darn tootin' right, man. That's a wrap for Wake Up WarChant. Thanks for being here, folks. Jeff Cameron coming up at 3 o'clock.
Darn pop-ups and video ads.
Are you wasting your time again on clickbait FSU updates that are bloated down with ads?
Yeah. And after crashing my computer, the information isn't even up to date. You're on WarChant.com. What's really going on with the Seminoles?
For the real scoop, you'll need to get your own WarChant subscription.
What's it cost?
Free. There's a 30-day trial offer right now.
You know I like free. Sign me up.
Use the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Nobody has more accurate and timely information on the Noles than WarChant.com.
WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.